Welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, your source for independent board game reviews and discussions. We are board gamers in Central Iowa, dedicated to providing our audience with a nuanced and critical look at board games.
Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sallin, and I'm here joined tonight by not Andy Dennison, who is unfortunately indisposed at the time. Instead, I'm here with a flustered TC Reed. TC, how are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm here. I survived my parent-teacher conference. I'm good.
Did your kid make any references to the Curse of Chucky?
No, but there was a Jason Voorhees reference about his playground behavior. I was actually kind of proud about that.
Oh my goodness. I'm not surprised at all. Well, another father here joining me that is here every time that we record The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, more or less, over 130-something odd episodes. I think this is 137. He's been here from episode 1, and it's Trent Ham. Trent, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Yeah, and hey, Trent, you're doing great. Why don't you start us off? We're gonna just jump right into reviews here. Maybe as we once you finish your review, I'll say any business or anything that's out of the way. But I want to hear about this big game from Hollandspiel that I am really pumped to know what you and Andy thought of.
Well, I have a feeling Andy is going to give his thoughts next episode. But I'm going to review 4X, which is the new release from Hollandspiel Games, designed by Tom Russell. 4X is a game of currency trading. The game consists of, I believe, from memory, it's 8 currencies. I'm thinking about that. 1, 2, 3, maybe only 7. I cheated. I looked. It's only 7. And so the board is just basically 7 rows on it, and each row has the name of a currency and about 10 columns on it, say like 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 5, 6, and 8. And that's the only thing that's on the board. Mostly this is a card game. And the cards in the game represent 2 different things. One set of cards represents each type of currency. It's basically money. And so in this game, when you get it, the money is cards and cards is money. It would be very difficult to play this game with chips unless you just said all chips of a particular color were one currency. I guess you could maybe do it that way. But I think the cards work really well for this. So the money's represented by cards. And there's also these certificates you can buy. And so on your turn, you start off with 2 of each currency. And there's some default prices for each of the currency. So on the board, the way they depict prices is every currency is valued in relation to every other currency, and it's depicted by a token that's on the board, a double-sided one. So every possible pair of currencies on the board, so like the Japanese yen and the US dollar, would have one double-sided token. This is Japanese yen on one side and US dollar on the other. If the dollar is worth more than the yen, you have it on the dollar side or you have it on the yen side on the dollar track. So if it's that way, you're saying like, and it's on the 3 spot, you'd be saying 3 yens equal $1 in value. So different things you do during the game are going to make that token move up and down the track. If it ever gets all the way to the low end of the dollar track, you flip it and put it down on the yen track so it can move that way. So, for example, let's say you have them at the same, it's still on the US dollar track, but you have it on the yen side and it's worth $1 and you make it devalue even more. Then you move it, you flip it over and you move it down to the yen track, and now it's got the dollar side up and it says $1. They're still the same, but now the Japan is the dominant currency, or the yen is the dominant currency. And then if the dollar continues to devalue next to the yen, it goes on down that track. So it's a really slick way to keep track of the relationship between every 2 currencies. Now, the thing is, when this game starts, all the currencies are relatively in balance with each other. But over time, you're going to start having imbalances. Like you're going to see, for example, 2 different currencies are propped up or keep going up in value, and they say because that they stay kind of in proportion to each other, but they're becoming more and more valuable in relation to everything else on the board, all the other currencies. So this is all, and this can happen in many, many infinite permutations. The thing is, you got to watch the board and see where the value inefficiencies are. But the game plays out really easy. On your turn, you basically got 3 options. the first thing you can do is you can buy a certificate. And what a certificate is basically you pay 2 of that currency to buy a certificate of that currency, and the value of it goes up. So I can spend €2 and I get a euro certificate, and then the value of the euro against all currencies in the game goes up. So you adjust all the tokens on the board appropriately. Basically, everything in the euro column moves 1 space to the right, and the euro token that's in any other row goes 1 space to the left. That's all you have to do, and you get the little certificate, and you pay €2 to the bank. The second thing you can do is sell one of those certificates. When you do that, you get €2 if you sell a euro certificate, but then the value of the euro goes down 1 spot all over the board. Okay, so it's this other thing you can do with a certificate. Third thing you can do, there's actually 4 things you can do. I kind of cheated a little bit. Third thing you can do is you can declare a contract, and this is where the game gets pretty interesting and gets pretty funky. The way you declare a contract is you say, right now, let's say the dollar's worth €3 on the board. Okay, every dollar we get €3 in exchange. You say at some point in the future, I promise to pay $1 to buy €3, or I promise to pay $5 for €15. Whatever you want to do, as long as that ratio is the same as on the board, you can create this contract. And you create that off to the side, and it's indicated with a special card that indicates that it's a contract. And you keep a copy of that card, and then a copy of that card is added to an action, basically a small tableau of cards that's like actions up above. It's like a contract row. I'll get back to that in a second. So that's one of the things you can do. You can say, at some point in the future, and I don't know quite when it's going to be, I will make an exchange equal to the current values. So basically, once you've done that, you're going to want to adjust the value so you're getting more worth of that whenever the contract comes up. So right now, let's say I'm willing to exchange $1 for €3. In the future, you're going to want the dollar to only be worth €2, so that when you're exchanging $1, you're actually getting more value for it than it is actually worth at that time. So what you're going to want is like the dollar to devalue a little bit. You're going to want to play around the currency so the ratio gets better for you, and you're getting more stuff out of it in the end. That's part of the game. That's the reason. That's what the buying and selling of the certificates does. It'll move up the values of the various currencies and move them down, and so on. Other thing you can do is, as I mentioned, there's that little tableau of contracts up above. You can just say, I'm going to execute whatever's first in that row. It might be your contract. It might be someone else's contract. Whatever, it's going to resolve now. That's your action for the turn. Now, there's like a little stack of cards that's always in this row, and it's called the dividend stack. And the stack is like 5 cards deep. And on the first one, it says no dividends. And when you pick that, all that happens is that card goes away and that stack goes to the back of the row. And then, the next card at the top of the row is like contract, maybe contract A and then contract B. You get back to the dividend stack, and now the dividend says +2 on the top. That means everyone that has a certificate gets $2 of that currency, whatever face it might be, just as income right then. So let's say I bought 2 euro certificates during the game. As soon as that comes up, I get €4 in cash. So those certificates are kind of a long-term investment as well. They don't just let you manipulate the market, they're also an investment that will eventually gain you cash. Great. Then that top one goes off, the one that says +2, goes back to the end of the row. Then the next one says +2, and the next one says +2, and the last one says +3. So that's basically how much dividends every certificate you have is paying. It pays out that much in cash. When that +3 one is chosen off of that market, that's the end of the game. The game is over, boom. And then what you do is you see which currency on the board is the strongest, literally convert all of the money you have to that currency. All of your certificates you bought are now worthless, and whoever has the most of that most valuable currency is the winner. That's the entirety of how the game is played. There's nothing else to it. The problem is it's all emergent. Everything in the game is emergent. And everything feels like it has a huge butterfly effect that you can't predict. Another part of it that's really tricky is this is a game that's going to have a lot of short-term alliances. I played this game on last past Sunday with 3 players. The third player is a player in our group who is known for doing things in games that are just like poking at other players. And I bet Joe can guess who I'm talking about.
Oh my goodness, you played this with Dilla?
Yes. Me, Andy, and Dilla. And there were short-term alliances all over the place in this. We were going back and forth and doing things back and forth to each other. Like, at one point, Dylan and I agreed to prop up the euro. We tried to escalate its value, and we both worked towards doing it. Another time, well, again, Dylan and I also agreed in an alliance that we would try on our turns to blow through contracts fast because Andy had a really dud contract that was going to come up in about 4 rounds. So we made sure that hurried up, and he only had 1 turn with which to do anything to improve his contract. And he got hung with a pretty sour contract.
Did Andy just end up tanking at that point?
No, he came in second. Dilla ended up getting the worst of it because Andy and I did an anti-Dilla thing.
Of course, because that's the guy you can't trust. So yeah. TC, if you ever play this game, that's gonna be the anti-TC alliance. It'll be like, oh, I know what you do in games, TC.
Well, when you first heard about you guys talking about, I'm like 4X. Oh, cool! It's an exploration game, like a 4X game.
No, it's
and then Trent comes on and says, "It's like, oh, it's an economic game." I'm like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about, Trent.
No, the rules are really simple. This game can be taught in like 5 minutes. But the problem is understanding what on earth you should even do is not really clear. I play this, and through the first half of the game, I had no idea of what to do to increase the value of what I was holding. Other than to just buy certificates and sit on dividends is the only thing, because that's extremely obvious. Spend all your money on certificates and then sit there and let dividends come in. But the problem is if you do that, other people are going to hurt you when you do that because you don't. The certificates are worthless at the end. You'll have a bunch of currency, but a lot of the currency will be completely junk. It'll be almost worth nothing. And so you can't let that happen to yourself. You have to manipulate. And understanding when to manipulate and what to manipulate isn't really obvious. The rules for it are real simple. The rules for this game can fit on a page. I'm not exaggerating. I'm pretty sure you could fit everything you need to know for this game on a single page. The rulebook's a little longer. I think the rulebook is shockingly 8 pages with a single-page summary on the back cover and a full art front cover. So the rules are actually only 6 pages. But it's not rules complex. It's one of those games where the game is complex, not the rules. The rules can be taught really quickly, and that's the kind I find more and more I'm enjoying that kind of game. It harkens back to the reasons why I like Reiner Knizia's auction games. They can be taught in like 5 minutes, but the decisions are really hard because the options and the domino effect and how other players can affect you become so rich. This kind of feels a little bit like a more complex version of that. And that it's all emergent. It's all like what happens during the game. It's all about how the economy evolves by player choices. It's how you can see when there's imbalances between different currencies and take advantage of that. That's what this game is all about. And it's about short-term alliances and such. Because of that, I love this game. If that sounds appealing to you, you're going to love 4X. If that sounds like a nightmare to you and really boring, then you're not going to love 4X. It is what it is. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I look forward to playing it again with more people. I will try to get anyone I can to play this that has even remotest interest because I think it's just brilliant. But it's one of those games where you can probably tell from the description and looking at it for about a minute whether or not this is for you or not. And if it's not for you, cool, move on. But if it is for you, this is awesome. And that's 4X.
Well, you sold me on playing it here, Trent. I'm really interested. And I just want to know, is there a Brexit?
No.
Okay, no.
The pound is one of the currencies.
Have you guys played that Sidereal Confluence game yet?
Sidereal Confluence, yes, we have.
Which one would you prefer? Because that's the economic game I am just like chomping at the bit to try because it just looks bananas.
It would depend a lot on who I was playing with.
I wouldn't call that one as much of an economic game. It's a
trading game.
It's trading, yeah. It's more resources trading than it is because economic games, I consider that to be like where it involves like investments and a lot of I would say most economic games include stock in some degree, and it sounds to me like certificates are almost like a souped up version of stock. Does that sound accurate? Certificates in 4X?
The certificates are a lot like stocks, but they're worthless at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that's TC how I would distinguish between those two. I think though that trading is more. I think you would love Sidereal Confluence.
The certificates are tools in this game. They're tools for elevating the value of a particular currency or dropping it. They're also tools for, collecting more dividends, but themselves they're worthless. They don't actually help you win in the end, other than their impact. They themselves don't give you any victory points. They're a tool. And how do you use those tools? That's the fun part.
Yeah, no, it sounds really cool.
Andy and I,
Andy
and I stood around for like an hour discussing like what you should even do during the first round.
Yeah, you were saying that like you guys were just baffled after this.
Yeah, we stood around and
talked
a long time. We left the store, and then we ended up staying there for a long time talking about like, what do you even do during the first round of this? What should you do?
It sounds like what Cole said on the episode. When
it sounds like one of those games you can definitely dig a big hole for yourself.
I mean, yeah, oh yes, you can. The first player in our game, not me or Andy, the other guy, he dug himself a pretty bad hole early on.
How long
was it? He was trying to interfere with other people too early, which shouldn't surprise Joe a bit.
That's what he always does. He comes right out of the gate. He goes hard for the jugular.
Yeah, he tried to do that in this. You can't really do that in this. You got to have some tools in place before you can really do that.
So how long did it take you guys, or how long do you think it would take?
I would say this game should take about half an hour per player.
Okay.
What's the player count on it?
2 to 6.
2 to 6. Okay.
6 sounds like it would be a chaotic, nightmarish mess. I don't really know if I want to play it with 6.
Oh, so it's right up my alley. Okay.
Yes, all you. Actually, TC, this probably has quite a bit of shenanigans. If there's a economic game for you, then this might be it.
Well, I definitely, when they give it a shot, it's definitely on my radar. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about it.
Yeah, me too. So that was 4X. Thank you, Trent, for letting us know. That's by Hollandspiel, which is kind of a little boutique publisher. So check that out if you can get a hold of it. Get a hold of it while there's copies, because they are definitely only made only so many of them in existence at this point. So I wanted to quickly remind all of our listeners that you can check us out on Good Board Ugly's Guild on Board Game Geek, Guild number 2173. Please join that. And also follow on Twitter at Good Board Ugly. And then, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So that would be a way for you to find out whenever we are recording, because most everything we do now is live. But you'll also find some amazing things from Jonathan, who many people know and love from our earlier days, back before Jonathan had to take a hiatus from the Good, the Board, and the Ugly, an indefinite hiatus as work and life and everything has taken hold. He still gets some times, and he's really been working on his writing ability, as I've noticed, in his most recent post. So he had a really interesting one about making perfect moves. So check that out on our Good Board Ugly Guild number 2173. Also, look at GameSurplus.com. They're the sponsor of the Good, the Board, and the Ugly. Carmen, right now, is in Essen, checking out all the best and most undiscovered games in Essen Spiel. So a lot of the things that Carmen found last year ended up getting big contracts to be distributed later on. But a lot of the customers at Game Surplus were first in line to get these games that otherwise wouldn't have been possible to be imported. So he's there. He is in the same capacity he used to be, sort of going around as a small, like a mid-size. It's almost like I really want to support what he's doing. I think it's really cool because, these are games that otherwise wouldn't make it over. And a lot of times they bring over the game itself by finding a larger distributor. So Carmen has a pretty big role in that, and you can be a part of that type of thing. If you really like kickstarting things, well, Game Surplus in a way, is a different venue, but does that same sort of thing by bringing games over from Essen. So check them out at GameSurplus.com. We're going to be recording a post-Essen episode with Jeff Gamble and Carmen. That'll be sometime later on after they've both come back and are no longer jet-lagged. Anyway.
You should do it while they're jet-lagged. That'd be great.
Yes, the moment they land.
Yeah. We're on.
Yeah. So yeah, very jealous of those guys. I mean, they've been texting, or not texting. I was a part of their texting group, and then they've been tweeting some pictures and stuff. And they went to go see a hockey game. There's some really cool stuff going on over there. So also other members, Heavy Cardboard of the sponsorship. They also are sponsored by Game Surplus, and they're over there as well. So maybe one day, right, guys? One day we can always hope. So
yeah. My retirement gift.
There you go. So anyway, that's business out of the way now. I'm going to tell you guys about a 2-player game that's come out from Mayfair Games, designed by Uwe Rosenberg, and it is a 2-player version of Caverna called Caverna Cave versus Cave. Caverna Cave versus Cave involves worker placement without workers. Oh, goodness. And what's interesting about it is you're really action drafting. And it harkens back to when Tony was still on Heavy Cardboard and they had this episode on worker placement. And it was such an interesting, to me, an interesting back and forth that Tony and Edward had about, what dictates worker placement. And they eventually settled on action drafting as a more appropriate word. And that's precisely where my brain went to when I started playing Caverna Cave versus Cave. You are drafting actions, and the amount of actions you take is fixed throughout the game completely. You will take alternating actions, except you'll kind of you'll get to take a double action at the beginning of every round. So you'll get to go twice in a row, and that's kind of how the player switches. You just keep doing this until you've finished the amount of set rounds the game has. And you add up the points on your buildings that you've built in your cave, the rooms that you've furnished, as well as how much gold you have. So there's not very many ways to score here. It's really fairly simply about getting the most points in terms of every building you build is worth a certain amount of points, and the gold is a resource that you can bank at least 19 up to 19 points of at the end of the game, but anything over that you just lose. So it may sound really simplistic, and at first blush, it certainly is. My first game of Caverna Cave versus Cave felt like there's nothing that spectacular about this. It's okay. It seems fine. And what most struck me about it on my second play was that as the way that the buildings are made available was kind of cool. You shuffle all the buildings in the game up randomly, except for these 6 that are openly available from the beginning of the game. And you'll actually take those and put them face down on your player board, and they are now sort of like rubble that you have to clear before you can actually make a room. And so you'll almost always flip up a building, and it'll be available to your opponent most often before it's available to you, because you had to clear it, and now they get a turn, and now you have to take another turn later on. Generally, you're going to be spending, like, the food is almost like the money in the game. It's like gold is worth points, but food is like the money. But anyway, all these resources are can be used in different ways. There's several different resources that you manipulate. And really what you're doing is you're going to be clearing these rooms, you're going to be building rooms, and then you're going to be activating rooms. So it adds a healthy dose of tableau building and activation. So that's what I think is most interesting about Caverna Cave versus Cave. When I think about all the things going on in Uwe Rosenberg's other games, tableau building is not really necessarily something I can point at and say, this is a game that he did that has all these tableau building. I guess you guys, I'll put you guys in charge of thinking, hold me to that statement. If Uwe Rosenberg has come up with a different tableau builder, let me know. But here was my main thing about Caverna is that I really dislike Caverna compared to Agricola because it feels extremely similar, but it has openly available buildings from the very beginning, and they're just all out there, and anybody can, you kind of have to like step in on people's toes and step in front of them to really play it well. And I just am not a big fan of just all those things being available and all them being known from the beginning of the game. To me, it's just not a very interesting way to make those buildings available. The other thing I really dislike about it is that almost everything can be eaten. And so there's no tension in terms of feeding your family. It's just, I lose a point this way, I lose 2 points this way. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to feed anyway. You never take begging cards, which is to me a big stress and tension adding part to Agricola, and it's absent in Caverna. The other thing, and my biggest gripe about Caverna, is the adventuring. Adventuring seems cool. It's got thematic bases for everything that you do, but the adventuring boils down to you can do anything else in the game as long as you're a high enough level. And essentially what that does is it creates just less tension than there already was before. You just can basically do whatever you want, and it doesn't really matter so much. Just, whoever was the most efficient here, the most efficient there, got interacted with least in terms of the way the buildings are built. It just does not captivate me like Agricola does. However, Caverna 2-player does something to fix that. Every time that you quote-unquote adventure, instead you are running a tableau that you have crafted. Think about that for a second. You chose all the pieces that are in this tableau. You're the one who's put those pieces there. Now, when you activate them, it's not what do I want from this giant menu of oh so goody goodies. It's what have I done and how am I best going to use it? And in that way, the way that you go through the game, crafting buildings, trying to get the most points out of them, you're also trying to get the most efficient resource uses every time you activate this tableau. That's something I've never seen before in Uwe Rosenberg games. And it really pushes me to like every game I've played now, and I've played it about 5 times, every game has felt better than the last. That's weird. Usually these little 2-player games feel really great at first, and then they just kind of diminish over time. Caverna, Cave versus Cave, has done the opposite, and that's very strange. At this point, I am a very big fan of the game. I'm very excited about playing it more. That might change over time, but it even seems better in terms of Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small was a really good 2-player game. However, it had an issue where the game itself with the base game didn't feel like it was a full game. It was just kind of like a scenario, and this one definitely fixes that. It does feel like a full game, but it feels like they can blow it up with expansions. So, gentlemen.
Expansions for All Creatures Big and Small?
Yes, and they're like absolutely necessary.
Well, then I have a feeling they'll be making expansions for that Cave versus Cave then if they did it for...
And they could basically be the same size. They could be the same format, just a bunch of buildings. And I think there could even be a next level of those buildings. Like instead of it just being random, you could actually draft what goes into the, each person's cave, and then you could, there's some really interesting directions I think you can take when you expand the pool of buildings to be more than what you need to play the game. But I think, TC, that it's headed there as well.
No, yeah, cool.
Which
so, Trent,
which do you like better?
Between All Creatures Big and Small and this one?
Yes.
All Creatures Big and Small is a really good game that I think that it almost has the Le Havre issue, which we've had a little bit of chat from Norm and Dean and early and Mur now too. But most recently with Mur and Norm were earlier mentioning Le Havre. And Le Havre is an awesome game that has just, I don't know, like that you only play with like this tiny little deck of like 5 special buildings. And that's really the only buildings that are going to be different from game to game. And I like that there's a very small amount of like variability and randomness. I think there's a small amount of randomness, but I don't really like that there's that little amount of variability. And I'd say that Agricola All Creatures Big and Small is very similar to Le Havre in that way, especially since the game itself is like totally fixed. Like there's no random in the game whatsoever after setup. So I think that if you prefer Ora et Labora, which is a totally, from setup, it is totally deterministic. I think that maybe you'd go with All Creatures Big and Small. I think though that if you are more into, if you're more of just a Euro player in general and less of a fixed heavy economic gamer, I think that maybe Caverna Cave versus Cave is for you. It's tough. It's a tough call.
What about them? Did you play a 2-player version of Le Havre? Wasn't there a 2-player version of that game?
Yeah, that one is meh.
Oh, is that meh? Okay, it's dead to you guys. Okay, I won't mention it.
So it is. It's not just meh. It's weird because it's more about it's more about this exploration of token manipulation. Like there's a market that almost looks like a periodic table of elements, and things will like move up and over, and there's like diagonal movement, and every time something moves, it's now worth like an extra 1 or an extra 2, and it's just got this really weird exploration, which feels very abstracted. It still feels cool, but it feels very abstracted, and I would say that one is also totally fixed. Like it's actually very similar to Ora et Labora because you play on this resource wheel, and then it's totally fixed. I would say the 2-player game of Le Havre almost feels as similar to Ora et Labora as it does to Le Havre. Whereas this one, Caverna Cave versus Cave, to me, it keeps up the spirit of being a little bit lighter. It feels weird because I say the reason I dislike Caverna is because it's like a little lighter and a little looser and things matter less. But it almost feels like with a 2-player game like this that plays in such a short amount of time, like it more suits the game style. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Are you talking to me or TC?
I just kind of stop there. It looks like there's kind of some agreement here from Mer in our chat that it's like the way that the cubes and stuff move around is interesting, but it's not bad. It just, I don't know, like
it's weird.
it doesn't feel like it's Le Havre. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it feels like it's more this exploration of a 2-dimensional resource chart. And it feels less like it belongs. And I would say Caverna feels very much, in a weird way, kind of like TC. We just did the 7 Wonders Longview last. It was literally like 2 nights ago that we recorded it. And I would say that in many ways, Caverna feels like 7 Wonders Duel. It fixes my main gripes with Caverna. So like the things that I complain about with it, it's different, but it feels like it fixes those. It takes away this. It makes the adventuring depend on your own buildings. The buildings are made available as the game goes on, but it has an interesting way of like, if you don't like the buildings that are out, you can just, dig for more buildings in your own tableau. I mean, it's got a lot of different pieces in it, and it does everything in like a smaller package. And to me, that's all, very much success.
Yeah, one of the things I was looking at the rule book for this because I was running a game and I ended up renting Robinson Crusoe for Saturday. But one of the things that looked really interesting about it was you have to, like, when you excavate your cave, the walls have to be a certain way to put that tile out.
Ooh, I forgot to even say that. Yeah, the wall building in this game is also interesting. Like, it's, you end up building this wall. Like, it's another, I would say the wall building is yet another thing to have to, like, fight over because it's very, like, there's only one wall building action in this game for the most part.
It's like on that whole thing. And it looked like it's a nice little puzzly aspect. You're like, well, I can't do this. I got to do it. But you can build a wall, then you can demolish it. It looked pretty neat.
It actually is. I forgot to even mention that. That is a really cool part of the game because you got, like, if you build towards a certain direction, you can, like, get to this area that's got 3 walls on all sides. And then some of the best buildings will actually not, the resource costs of the buildings don't go up that much higher. Well, some of them do, but they're different. Some of them is like a gold vein. But this building won't cost you a ton, but it's that you have to totally seal off and have walls on all 4 sides, which is really, really hard to do, considering that your cave is basically shaped like a 4x2 with one little thing off to the side. So. No, that part of the game is very interesting, TC. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention it, but the wall manipulation is a further thing to fight over that's extremely intuitive, but simple and fits right into the package. So it's weird because when I first played it, I was like, it's unremarkable, but multiple plays have really brought things out, which is bizarre for a little 2-player game like that.
Yeah, I was eliminated pretty quickly from a Legend of the 5 Rings game and waiting for other people to finish their game. And you mentioned this game, and I broke it out and started looking at it. I'm like, oh, this could be really interesting. This looks really cool.
Well, since you were playing Legends of the 5 Rings, why don't you give us an update?
Oh God. Okay. Well, hey Trent, I heard you won a tournament.
Yes. In our area where Joe and I live, a local store had an inaugural 3-core tournament, and I won it. I went undefeated as Crane Splashing Crab. Ooh. In fact, if you go to 5ringsdb.com right now, the deck I used to win that tournament is the Crane deck of the week as I speak, although I don't know whether that will still be true when this is released.
Wow. I've been doing a pretty good job using Crane with a Phoenix Splash to mess with people. But yeah, so anyway, Legend of the 5 Rings. Oh my God, guys, I got suckered into it. We've been playing this. I mean, you guys were like saying, what do you want to review? I'm like, dude, I've been playing nothing but Legend of the 5 Rings for like 2 weeks straight. I've been like building decks and I have a good group and we've been playing, and this thing has really got its hooks on me. I mean, I even got we have 6 people in our group now. I managed to get 3 other people to buy 3 cores and join our group. I mean, we are just playing the crap out of this thing. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I've been enjoying playing all the factions, although Trent, I am leaning towards Crane, although I'm still really fond of Scorpion. I really like being a douchebag with Scorpion. They're pretty douchey.
They do a lot of douchey things, I agree.
Yeah. Like, oh, blackmail. Oh, yeah, that guy's fighting for me. What? How does that happen? Yeah, you can read this card. It happens. or the assassin. The only problem I'm having with it right now is since it's just the limit. I can't believe I'm saying 3 cores is a limited build. Oh my god, I'm such a junkie now. But it just seems like there's certain cards you're always seeing come up in certain builds to be effective. Like I'm always running across like assassination and what is it for shame? It seems like there seem to be some cards that you need to have in your deck just flat out right now.
Part of the problem with the limited card pool is actually something I was talking about with Joe just before the show started. I think that's part of the reason that Fantasy Flight is pushing out so many packs so quick, is to just make the card pool bigger so that you're not seeing the same cards over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that was actually surprising because when I bought 3 cores, I'm like, man, there's a ton of cards. And I was actually surprised how little deck building you can do with 3 cores. Because if you're doing your Dynasty deck, you're almost always putting out all your characters with a little neutrals if you want.
Yeah,
and
and there's some neutrals I never use, like Wandering Ronin is just never. I don't ever.
Oh, I hate that guy. If I see a Wandering Ronin on a province, I just go after it out of spite, just to blow that card out. I'm like, I hate that guy. I hate him. And most of the deck building does seem to be with that conflict deck, with what splash you use. And there's been some really creative splashes that I've come up against. And from what I've seen in my group, one of our guys has used a unicorn and has been real effective with it, even though it seems the meta. Look at the meta. It's been like the unicorns aren't that great. This guy's just been stomping us. And then Kate, my daughter's been adopting that deck and has been merciless on me as well. So I've been having unicorn nightmares. Like, how do I beat this thing? How do I tweak this deck? I'm just like going through all my cards, fury, trying to get it. But I am really surprised. And usually I don't lean towards deck building games at all, but Arkham turned all that around. And when this came out, I guess my experience with Arkham building decks has been a benefit to me. So man, it's 3 cores. It's a hefty price of entry. 6 packs in 6 weeks is pretty big. And I have
the first one drops in exactly 2 weeks.
Oh my god!
Weekly after that,
guys, I just picked my Arkham Mythos pack. Fantasy Flight's gonna be taking my money from here to God knows when. Thanks. But if you're into this type of game and you find a group of people to get in with you, it seems to be holding up. I'm gonna be curious to see how well this goes. And Trent, I'm really glad you're playing it because now I have a fellow junkie I can talk about deck builds with and what's working and what's not.
Yeah, I'm only on Crane at least until the packs start dropping. I can say that. Crane's my faction. I mean, I'm not like that committed that I wouldn't change, but I mean, it's going to depend on what's in these packs coming out. But right in the core set alone, Crane's my jam. Yeah,
I was playing against a guy who had a crab deck that turned that whole thing into an aggro deck. It was amazing. I didn't see it coming, and he just trounced me quick, just aggroing out with crab. He put a lion splash in there, and it was something to see. My son, I lost to my son with Dishonor just the other day. He was playing Phoenix and actually made me lose all my honor as Crane. Really? That's hard to do.
I kept overbidding him until I started getting in trouble, and then he kept switching the air. I think it's air is the one that gets you honor. He kept switching that back out to the middle and then using the Claim Champion to steal one of my honor.
Oh,
the
God.
Phoenix Claim Champion gets to resolve one of those out in the middle. So he just nicked me down from there, and there was nothing I could do about it. He kept putting it back out there. that was the stronghold he had, or that was the strong province he had on a stronghold. That's what I needed to attack.
Mm-hmm.
So I could either just sit there and do nothing, and then he'd use it, or I could attack his stronghold and he'd put it back out there. So I knew I was getting nicked for an honor every round. I couldn't stop him, so he just honored me out. It was so weird.
Yeah, I
dishonor.
Yeah, I won with Crane on a military, crushing the last stronghold, which was unusual. Yeah. But man, Scorpion, when Scorpion goes against Crane, I have a hard time because I have my Scorpion's deck built to just be a dishonored douche deck. And it's hard because they're always honoring their own people and pulling them out and be like, I got more honor. That event doesn't happen.
Is honor like renown, Trent, or is this different?
Honor is more like
honor is a token pool.
What? Go ahead.
I say honor is just a token pool. Like, so when there's 3 ways to win this game: crush the last stronghold, get 25 honor chits, or cause someone to lose all their honor chits. So the way I've been playing the game is I usually go after strongholds. I like doing like the douchey honor, dishonor stuff. If you can like have all these card effects, is when you dishonor a character and that character flies out, you lose an honor. If you can dishonor a lot of people and just have all those characters fly off, and then they're trying to like figure out how many cards they need, but they can't go too high, you can get crushed. Or
it's a lot like power in Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Except in this one, you start off with a number that's like around 10 or 11, and you win by getting to 25, and you lose if you ever get to 0.
Oh, gotcha. So you do start with some, and then you can lose. All right, yeah, it sounds like power. When I said renown, I meant power. It's just been a while.
Power.
I really want to try this now, Trent. I really do, and I think that now is the time that I need to, because I need to know now before this deluge comes in and I end up like 360 cards in a pool behind. But
or you become Karma's best friend at Game Surplus when you write a big check for him for all the crap you need.
There you go, man. That's the truth.
But yeah, I've been enjoying it. I've been surprised how much I'm enjoying it. I've been really surprised how many people I get to play it. We've been talking about in our local game store being Team Cloud Cap and going to local tournaments with our own T-shirts. It's getting out of control, guys. I may need some rehab or something. You may have to go and like come save me. No, we gotta go save TV. He's lost. Gotta pull him back.
L5R addicts. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, TC, and we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say about cooperative games, because I can only it blows my mind to imagine you playing a cooperative game, knowing the way that you like.
I can't wait for this discussion. Oh, I can't wait.
So now we're going to jump into our topic here. Trent, would you like to introduce why we're going back to discuss cooperative games, something that we have talked about in the Good Board Ugly archive?
Okay, I'm going to go back and talk about them because this has actually come up as a topic, and my wife and I have been discussing Pandemic Legacy recently with the release of Pandemic Legacy Season 2. That was the genesis of this. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, I've never been a big fan of Pandemic. And the biggest reason for that is it does one thing that I really dislike in co-op games. And it's something that was really prevalent with the first big popular generation of co-ops with Pandemic and Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert. And that's the alpha gamer problem.
Mm-hmm.
Those games like Pandemic and Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert and a lot of that generation, Freedom the Underground Railroad, and a lot of those games in that generation that were the first really popular wave of co-ops recently, and about 5 or 6 years ago, all had a really bad problem in which the game state was such that one player could understand everything that was going on and basically then instruct everybody else what to do. And it would you just either went along with the alpha gamer, or you caused a bunch of argument and angst over a game that was cooperative, which is usually something that most people at the table didn't really enjoy. Most of the time when I played it, I didn't like being alpha gamer, so I would just sit back and let someone else do it. And usually someone eventually would. I found that it was very rare to play those games without someone just kind of dictating what everybody would do and the other people just following along. And I didn't enjoy that. And that's just not a fun experience for me. Mm-hmm. What I found is I must not be the only person in the world that observed this, because in the last few years, I felt like a lot of co-ops have came out that had different ways of solving that alpha gamer problem. And they used a handful of tricks to do this in various ways. And I found that over time, I've come to like co-ops a lot better, the ones that use these tricks to kind of shut down the alpha gamer. And I just kind of want to talk about some of those tricks. So I thought it'd be a fun way to revisit co-op games.
Excellent.
All right.
That makes sense.
I had 3 that I really wanted to bring up, and you guys may throw in others or variants of them. So I'll just go through them. I'll kind of do the lead on this. The first one is what I would call time restriction, where you're effectively on some sort of timer and there isn't enough time to really dictate the exact solution to the problem. And that one was obviously the big example I would think of that is Space Alert, which might be like, why am I lauding Space Alert when I've kind of worked on it in the past? Space Alert is a game that I think is a lot of fun, but it requires a group where everybody's roughly the same skill level with it. Mm-hmm. Because if you feel like you don't know what you're doing and other people do, it can still lend itself to a weaker version of Alpha Gamer, where you're just kind of letting someone else tell you what to do. But the game clicks when everybody knows their own thing, and then mostly you're just communicating about the threats. You're not telling anyone else how to solve it. You're saying, can you handle this? And if that person says yes, you got to move on. Because there isn't time to sit around and say, oh, you got to do this, and then you got to do this, and then I'll do this, and you do that. There isn't time for that in Space Alert. So everybody's at roughly the same skill level. Space Alert's fantastic because the time makes it so that you can't do that type of communication. Another game that I think does that really well is Bomb Squad from TMG. Same thing there. Bomb Squad's like a programmable game where you're kind of programming moves that your robots are going to do, and you're doing it collectively in much the same way as like any other co-op. But you have to do it very fast and keep revealing them over and over to get through it. Weirdly enough, I actually have this weird fondness for Escape, which is
Escape. I was going to mention
game.
Escape. That one's fun.
It's just fun. But the thing is, that game is going so fast. There's no way anyone can alpha game it. You're just rolling and 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 grabbing dice and basically moving as fast as you can identify symbols on the board, just about. And again, I mean, it's not. I'm not going to laud that it's this greatest game of all time, but it does solve the alpha gamer problem by putting a time limit on it.
Additionally, you have to like roll dice. So I mean, like, you know, whatever. Like a lot of that game is, you know, dude, you need to roll this. Okay, and then the person, you know, even though all they're doing is a rote activity of just trying to roll three steps, like they're sitting there trying to do it, and they feel like they're participating.
Yep, I think adding a timer helps with the alpha gamer problem as a general rule of thumb. As a rule of thumb, if a game is timed and it's a co-op, I'm gonna like it better than Pandemic.
Yeah, what was
I'm
it?
just hammering on Pandemic in this, but really I'm saying is I like it because there's not an alpha gamer, which is the big problem I have with Pandemic. So it's not just say I'm hammering Pandemic itself, I'm hammering the alpha gamer problem, which I think Pandemic has in spades. Pandemic does other things good, but I hate alpha gamers. Just making that clear. Making that clear. I don't like alpha gamers. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a fantasy flight game that Eric Lang did based on a computer game that had it was all timed. Yeah, that one I really enjoyed because you have this timer and you're like, okay, I gotta give this money out and have like 2 seconds to do it. And like, there's no way anyone can tell me what to do because I've got to crunch this out. And that app really helped.
I had that game at one time and I ended up in the hands of a friend, and we actually played that quite a bit for a while. And then we got the expansion. We were all excited to play it some more, and then for some reason we never got it out again. I don't really know what happened. But I will say we went through a phase where that was a very popular one. I hadn't even thought of that one, but that's another great example.
Because I remember we had an alpha gamer problem in our group when that game came out, and that one squashed it because we were like, dude, you need to concentrate on your own thing and leave me alone because we're losing right now.
It looks like the best thing you communicate in that game is to say, I need this, can you provide it?
Yeah.
And then it's up to them to provide it. They either say yes or no I can, or yes or no I can't. You know, like I can or I can't do this. And then if they can, it helps you solve your problem, but you're solving your own problem. You're not being dictated to by anyone else. And that's what I really liked about XCOM. The thing again with XCOM is I think it works even the game works better when everyone knows what they're doing with their roles.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to go into it knowing that, okay, we're going to play this game. There's going to be a timer, and it's going to be stressful, but that's part of the fun of the game. You've got to go in knowing that.
Everybody's got to know their role in that. Well, that's another one that's a lot of fun. Again, so I'm naming co-ops I like more than Pandemic.
Trent, it looks like Magic Maze is like this brand new game, and I've been looking it up here because it got mentioned in our chat. But if you like Escape, it sounds like Magic Maze may be a good step to go to.
Okay, I mean, we played Escape a ton for about a month, and then it got put away and never played again, and I eventually traded it.
Yeah, I'm not that big a fan of Escape
personally. For like that month. It was a good game. It just didn't have the really, really, really long legs of my group. But okay, so
my wife gets a headache from all that dice rolling. Like just she does. She gets a migraine, and oh my goodness, man, yes, that'll shut the game down like yesterday.
Okay, the second element that I think works really well, and I tried to think of more examples of this, and I'm sure there are some that for some reason I'm not thinking of, but it's communication restriction, where you're restricted by the rules of the game from fully communicating in the game state. And the one I came up with was Hanabi. Hanabi is where it's basically a card game where you're working cooperatively, but you can see everybody else's hand, but you can't see your own because you're essentially holding your hand of cards inverted. You're holding them outwards. And other people have to give you clues about what's in your hand, but they're not allowed to, you can't table talk at all. Part of the rules of the game is you cannot table talk. And it's that restriction that makes the co-op interesting. It's impossible to alpha game at that. Instead, it's kind of like you're trying to think through how much information you can give and just giving someone a simple clue about their hand. Like you have 3 red cards or you have a 1 in your hand. Like how much information is that really giving to the other person? And that's like, that to me is where the fun of Hanabi is. I tried really hard to think of other games that do that kind of information restriction. For some reason, I drew a blank other than Hanabi.
Well, I played in the Mountains of Madness, and that had a pretty interesting communication restriction on it.
How does that work?
You get this madness card, and you actually physically have to do what it says. Like you have to talk with like a fake mustache on your mouth, and you're trying to communicate, or you have to you physically have to do something. And the longer the game goes, the more these crazy madness cards you get, and it just gets out of control. It's almost a borderline party game, but you're all trying to work together to get to a goal. And this game's throwing like these crazy ways to restrict your communication, and it gets loud. I was in a game that got pretty raucous. It was pretty fun, but it's almost a borderline party game, but it's still fun for what it was.
I mean, do you think of anything, Joe, that uses communication restriction like Hanabi?
Along the lines, the same thing as Hanabi. Off the top of my head, I don't think so. I mean, well, yeah, I might need a little bit of time to think about it. Because
Huh?
It's a unique thing. But yeah, keep going. I'll jump in. I might cut you off if I can think of something.
Okay. The third category, and this one's going to be fairly broad, and I thought of 2 really good examples of this. And this is complex game states, where each player has enough hidden information that just they know, and the game state becomes so complex that one person really can no longer alpha game it in any sort of effective, realistic way. And the 2 I thought of this were 3 technically. I thought of Mage Knight and Star Wars Frontiers and Spirit Island, because I thought all 3 of those were examples of this at work, where unless you have played this game a ton and also have memorized what everyone else is doing and all the cards they've collected and everything, you can't alpha game it. Everybody's got their own set of things that they can do, and they're very distinct and unique, and there's a lot of different options for them to process. And a lot of times those options aren't necessarily known to all the other players. So you simply can't be told what to do because the situation is so complex, and there's maybe a little bit of information as well. And so what that effectively does, it shuts down the alpha gamer. They can't tell you what to do because they don't know all your options. And so they can say, can you help with this? Which is like what I get back to with like Space Alert again. Someone's just saying, can you help with this problem? They're not telling you how to help. They're saying, can you help? And then that's up to you to solve that on your own. And then again, puts agency back in the hands of all the individual players, which is that to me is when a co-op becomes fun, is when everybody's involved in the decision-making process. And I think the really complex ones do that just simply because of their complexity. And again, Mage Knight, and I would say probably Robinson Crusoe and First Martians would be in that group, if you can find people to play First Martians with you.
I would put Arkham Horror, the card game, right up there in that category.
That's another one. I would agree with that.
I mean, because you have a hand of cards only you are seeing. So you have to work out what you can do to help, because someone's just going to say, dude, this monster flew on me. It's got like 9 health. It's going to take 5 to hit it. You're the fighter. You're the guardian. What can you do to come over here and help me? And you're like, and then, it becomes bad.
Yep, those are ones that, I mean, and again, I've named like 10 co-ops that I think I like better than Pandemic, and it's all because they kill the problem I had with Pandemic, which is the alpha gamer problem. So I'll throw it out to you guys. Can you think of any other co-ops or mechanisms that really take care of alpha gamer problems in co-ops?
I can, if you want to give me. My favorite mechanism that really solves the alpha gamer co-op is the trader mechanism, and the game that comes specifically to mind is Battlestar Galactica.
So
if you let
a semi co-op, in other words,
if you let someone alpha game Battlestar Galactica, you're letting the Cylon win the game. Because you're like, why are we listening to this guy doing all this stuff? And there's such an element of not trusting anybody in that game that really changes it up. And there's just the theme on that one, because I loved the TV show as it was that was on Sci-Fi, and that was, I've had a lot of fun with that one. And that game, even without the trader element in Battlestar, it's a really difficult game as it is. You throw someone there trying to tank the game, and it just becomes insane. And it took us a long time with Battlestar to even agree that the game was balanced. For the longest time, we couldn't even beat it. Like, there's no way to beat this thing. You just can't do it. But we got around to it. It took like a lot of plays to get there, but we did it.
Mm-hmm. I would say, Trent, as far as like these, new mechanisms, I think that TC's got a good point with semi-cooperatives, but I do think that kind of changes the dynamic of the game quite a bit. And I think that it can, with adding a semi-co-op, it can kind of fall into that same category that you mentioned with time-sensitive games. Because if a time-sensitive game also includes a level of complexity, where like just in terms of it, I would say Space Alert in a certain sense has a level of complexity that makes it difficult for you to tell another player what to do. You're supposed to hide what movement cards you're actually using, so you don't actually know what other people are doing. You can't fix any issues that they had, and so it's really up to them. I would say that it can result in that same sort of frustrating situation. Like if you're playing a semi-cooperative and you're trying to learn the game, and then you have like a trader there that's trying to undermine everything that you're doing, it can frustrate people. And I actually have a short vignette to paint for you, Trent, just to, make it feel like maybe you're not alone in that you hated Space Alert when you first played it. Like I was there about 2 weeks ago, and I was not a part of this game, but a brand new player that had never played before tried to play Space Alert with 3 players that were experienced and 1 new player. And the other new player was fairly experienced in games, knew what they were getting into, loved the game. This new guy was like his first time showing up at our game night, and it became really awkward and contentious afterwards because he accused the entire table of like being off doing their own thing and just ignoring him. And I think what can happen is in Space Alert, you're like, well, let's set this at a difficulty that we can win. So we set this at normal difficulty. And well, I would say, arguably a 4-player game at normal difficulty or a 5-player game at normal difficulty can be won by 4 players that know what they're doing, especially if they're experienced at the game. If they've played a lot. Like I would say, there's not much of a challenge there, and people can just kind of take care of everything. And that extra player ended up in the situation where, he didn't really matter. And for him, that was his experience with the game, and he got upset at the rest of the table. And it reminded me, Trent, a lot of like, it's almost like a rite of passage with this type of a game where it's like, the actual gameplay and an alpha gamer remedy comes from essentially, like playing with an entire group that's at the same level that you're at. And without that, it starts to sort of degrade. And I feel like I haven't played BSGTC, but if I was playing my first game and you were teaching me how to play and you were the Cylon and everything that you were teaching me about the game was actually just you coaxing me into losing the game. Like I would be kind of like,
playing of teaching the game. The hardest part with Battlestar is actually playing the Cylon, because you can't say, guys, I'm the Cylon. I don't know how the Cylon works. Can you tell me how to do it? Because you've got to like be. Can I see the rule book? You have to play it a few times to get up to speed on it, because it's if you tip your hand, you're the Cylon early. You're spending the whole game in the brig, and that can be really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've never run across a situation where I've been like, oh, I'm the son. I'm going to teach you how to play the game. You want to do all this stuff. Someone else at the table is going to go, you're listening to TC. They made a poor life choice right there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Another game I want to mention briefly, it brought up in the chat, is the Grizzled. And I completely spaced on the Grizzled because that was a game that Carissa picked up being a World War I fanatic.
Oh, that one has communication that you're not supposed to, like,
that has
you're
communication
not supposed to share everything.
Yeah, that's a communication restriction game. Yeah, that's a good one.
And plus you get those trauma cards that like do different things. Like there's one card in it that says you can't talk if you get it. You're just like,
I gotta say that has one of my favorite arts in a game ever. I really like the art in that game. I don't know what it is. I love it.
And the expansion is great. The expansion is fantastic.
I think I've played with the expansion yet. Anyway.
No.
What do you think about this as maybe an extra category? Games that involve heavy amounts of randomness.
It's like Escape?
Like Arkham Horror, the board game?
Or just any game where, like, you know, there's a heavy amount of randomness and, you know, you can't really know because people have to take their turn, roll a big handful of dice, and then you figure out that way. You know, like, that's kind of like what Escape does, but also there's lots of other co-ops because, like, I don't know, I found that for me personally, I'm not willing to tolerate a lot of randomness in a competitive game, but in a cooperative game, I have no issue with it.
Well, tell us all then how you feel about Eldritch Horror.
I like it. I think it's great.
My issue with Eldritch Horror comes from, I think it's an issue of expectation as well. And I still just am not on board with the nuns riding motorcycles with machine guns. Like, you know, I'm just not, man, I came from that, like, I love H.P. Lovecraft. I love these, like, you know, atmospheric, like, I like the build up and the ultimate reveal and the whole world just goes, you know, it's bad and it's gone. And those games to me, if they had, like, Mythos Tales does it. It has good writing. I think my issue was always that it felt like it was a bunch of fan fiction, a bunch of second-rate fan fiction that was strapped to a game that I got alpha games playing Eldritch Horror, so I don't know how much that actually fixed it in that case.
Well, you've seen the cover to the Arkham Horror board game. It's got like some dude in a 1912 car with machine guns blazing out the window. I mean, it's not exactly subtle. It's like Indiana Jones, the Lovecraft version of Indiana Jones. Yeah, I went to that game not even expecting it to be horror. I just wanted to blow stuff up.
Yeah, and that's probably on me because the game definitely like the game had built an audience through like the RPG, and I think that people kind of knew what to expect. I just came at it from like, you know, I was new to the hobby, and then I did get Alpha GameTrent. Like I played that game, and that's a game that isn't that complex of a game. Your decisions aren't that big of a deal. It's usually pretty obvious what you should do, but I was told what to do by somebody who was like, "Oh no, this is what your character should do." You know, and I knew how to play the game even, but like I'd already read the rules. I'd already tried playing a solo game, but I was alpha gamed, and that was my last experience with it. The person that alpha gamed me like got way too into it every time they flipped a card too.
The great thing about a game like Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror, the board game, when someone alpha games, you just do the exact opposite thing, do something crazy, roll the dice actually happen to go in your direction, you pull it off, and you say, see, gotcha, that decision was a good decision, stop telling me what to do. Or it just blows up in your face and you laugh and you think it's the most awesome thing ever, and it pisses off the alpha gamer even more. So either way, it's kind of a win-win. And you're not going to win an Arkham Horror game like 9 times out of 10 anyway. You're playing it for the experience, so whatever.
No, these are really good things to bring up because recently here, you know, like I've kind of said, I think, high amounts of randomness don't hurt a co-op, and I don't think really, you know, having now gone into that it necessarily takes away the alpha gamer problem. I think it just maybe takes away how long the game should last, or maybe, you know, I don't know. Like, it definitely changes the way I feel about a game when it involves heavy amounts of randomness. Definitely, specifically with, okay, let's make a comparison though, Trent, just to, you know, this is kind of more close to going back to what you said at the very beginning. Like I played you know, like what do I do, you know, in terms of alpha gaming or not alpha gaming? My parents are not heavy gamers, and like they actually, I don't really play games with them at all anymore. But one time I tried playing Freedom the Underground Railroad because my parents have brought me growing up to museums about, you know, they were about the Underground Railroad. We actually had Underground Railroad in the region of the southeastern Iowa that I'm from, and so I've been to like a historic house that's, you know, like kept up to look like it used to, and it had like these secret compartments and stuff. So I thought my parents would be really interested in this, and they were, but I did not alpha game them, and my parents were sitting there, and I think they just wanted me to, you know, like my parents were just totally they did not care, you know, they like for them the only enjoyment in the game came from like, you know, the historical connections, because the gameplay itself meant nothing to them. Really, it meant nothing. Because every single time that they had a turn, they were just like, you know, I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to move it up to Canada. It's like, well, when you do that, you're actually going to cause this cube over here to get caught. Oh, okay, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want cubes to be caught. And I was like, well, you could still do that, and it's fine. They're like, no, I don't want to get cubes caught. Because the only thing they cared about was freeing slaves. When we play Pandemic, my parents only care about curing disease. Or about treating disease. They don't actually... You know, they only deal with the most, like, the threat that's most at hand. They totally ignore the overarching goal of the game, which, you know, these games are interesting because they force you to balance. And that, to me, is a sign that this, you know, like an alpha gamer is pretty much necessary because somebody has to sort of connect all these dots. And it's very rare that, like Norm said, as teachers, we have to deal with kids working in groups. And trying to find the right sort of group synergy is very difficult. I mean, you know, you end up with a project that may seem like a great project, but it involves a kid who has to quarterback all of the other kids, you know, a kid who actually has to put the project together while everybody else, you know, otherwise it just turns into like 4 mini projects that are unrelated, you know, 4 mini projects that are separate topics relating to a central topic and they don't have much connection. So, I mean, you know, like in terms of where does cooperation end and leadership begin, and it, you know, like in a way, is that what alpha gaming really is?
That's a good question. That's kind of deeper than I thought I'd go with this.
I mean, are you saying like the issue is I think that a lot of gamers, when they sit down to play a co-op, and I will say that I have people in my life that will basically board game with me primarily when it's only a co-op. And it's because they don't like the way they view it as negative interactions between players. So like, as you said with your parents, they kind of want you to alpha game. I don't think it's necessarily like the people I'm thinking of that they want me to alpha game. They just don't want to have situations where we're conflicting in any way. They want it to be like a collective thing. And I mean, alpha gaming obviously solves that. They somebody sit back and tell them what to do. But honestly, I don't think they have a lot of fun with that either, if they're just told what to do. And so it's like a game where everybody has their own agency in some way is, I think, really what I look for. And I got to say, the person I'm thinking of in particular with this is someone in my life that literally I think their favorite game in the world is Hanabi. And it's because it's a co-op. Everybody has their own agency. Everybody has their own ability to make decisions. But no one's really haranguing anyone else for, you must do it this way. So that's why they really like Hanabi, I think.
Mm-hmm. It can be frustrating in Hanabi, though, if you've built up like a meta, because that's what you do in Hanabi. You're like, okay, so, you know, your new players, like, you not only have to teach them the rules, you're like, all right, every time we discard from the right, and we play from the left, you know, or whatever your group way of doing it is. Every time you get a clue, take that card and put it sideways so you know you've got a clue about it and you can remember the clue.
Yep. There's little things like that you kind of got to like help other players, but once they've got it, and it really isn't that big of a meta language.
It's simple, and it's something that's intuitive, I would say, for people that have played lots of games. I've definitely, though, been in a game with somebody who's brand new, and it was just like, you know, like I felt like I was the opposite. You know, I was that gamer that's sitting there like, well, I can't help them. This is wrecked. Like we're wrecked. You know, it's over. It's
like, just gotta play to the end.
went from scoring like 16 to getting over 15 to like well, in this game we scored 6. That is so bad. It's so bad.
So
I'm not really good.
I'm hearing a whole lot of Pandemic not liking. What do you think about the legacy system actually fixing the alpha gamer? Because one thing I noticed with Pandemic Legacy is that once someone got a character and they named their character and they put little stickers on their character, the first time they got like a scar, they're like, oh, that's bad. Well, what happens when I can't put anything more on here? Oh, that character gets ripped up and it goes away. At that point, they're like super invested in keeping this sucker alive and participating and not letting someone take over the game and run it.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I felt that was one of the things that I did like about Pandemic Legacy is that it gave the simple act of naming your characters and being involved with them gave them some agency over the characters. I point out that I feel the same thing happens in Gloomhaven.
Mm-hmm.
Is that people kind of feel attached to their characters and then thus are much more motivated to be assertive on behalf of their characters. Like, here's what I'm doing, folks. Deal.
Yeah. But it's best interest of this character that I'm invested in. I discovered that really fixed but especially in Pandemic, because I played the games of Pandemic, it's like, well, I'm just going to sit back. I don't care. But the minute we named our characters and there was a real risk of, and even actions affecting the permanent state of the board. I mean, he's like, we should do this. I'm like, I don't know if that's such a good idea, guys, because that could collapse and bad things are going to happen.
So I'm going to point this out. If you want to play something that's kind of interesting, and this has gotten bad reviews online, but I'm going to say it's got its own fun to it. You should take 4 pretty cutthroat gamers and have them play Seafall.
Oh, I agree. We're in the middle of this. We are playing Seafall right now. And we are halfway through it, and we are having a blast with this thing just because we are just being mean. We are like attacking each other's ports. My ship got sunk and became a random event that's like screwing with everyone now for the rest of the game. Yep. Oh, it's good stuff. But you have to be careful who you play that game with and know what you're getting into going in. But
I think some people pictured it as being much more build your own thing Euro-y rather than the like gank your face. Fast that Seafall actually is.
It is. It's just in your face. You're like, I can't go do this big action. I got all these dice and they all roll blanks. And you're like, your ship's just gone.
I think people thought it was going to be a lot more of a Euro and a lot more gentle and friendlier in terms of the player interactions than Seafall was. I think that is the biggest reason that game got negative reviews. And more, and it was even more exacerbated by the fact that people are naming their own characters and then like they just get owned.
Yeah. Well, you name your character, you can build it, and it goes back into this pile that people can draw from, and they can start messing with it. It's like, we named our characters hilarious. Like Gal Ducat in there. We had John the Carpenter. We had like horribly named people in this thing. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think that people feel attached. I think part of the thing is people thought it'd be gentler, and that people got attached to the things they created, and that game just does not care that you're attached to the things he created.
You get to name your island, and the island owns you. It's pretty nuts. We had Quib Quib. No one wants to go to Quib Quib anymore. Quib Quib's like in the danger zone. And if you're like really douchey, it becomes permanent stickers on this area that like affect you for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, you got to just accept this is what it is. And if you play it with the right people, I think Seafall's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I just think the negative reviews from it came because people were expecting a different game from Seafall than what it is.
Yeah, and the length of that game. I mean, it's a beast of a long game. I mean, we've played it a lot, and we're like just barely halfway through it. And that's when we can get everyone together to play it.
Yep. So we discussed like an extremely gank in your face game in the middle of a co-op episode, but
it made sense. I mean, legacy games though can cause you to invest in an experience that otherwise, like wouldn't necessarily breed the same sort of attachment to and involvement in the game. And you don't feel like you're getting alpha gamed, especially like, I mean, when you have to deal with the consequences of what happens to your character in this game together, like in the next game. When somebody's like, oh, dude, you got to get there. And you're like, there, right there. You mean the place that if we have an outbreak, which is very likely, I would die?
It's going to collapse on me? No, I want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me kind of almost wish I could play a Seafall with few people I'm thinking of right now in our local group. Get through a campaign of that with them. It'd be something else.
Yeah,
I want to see Andy play a campaign of Seafall.
You know what? You'd only be out like $20 right now. The thing's like super cheap. So even if I got a few games in of it, you're like, whatever. I got entertainment out of it already.
Things would be very different if Andy could play more than like 1 to 2 games a week. It'd be very different.
Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
So I don't have too much else to say on the subject, other than I feel like co-ops have come a long way since Pandemic and Defenders of the Realm and Forbidden Island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting iterations on co-ops now. Like New Angeles was a really interesting semi-co-op game that not a lot of people liked, but it was.
I love New Angeles.
Yeah, I really thought it was good. I still own it. It was great. And then there's even games coming out that are doing like you said, Gloomhaven. I want to get my hands on. That looks fantastic. We even touched on games like Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. That is a fantastic co-op where the app's just running the whole thing. My daughter loves playing that thing, going through that haunted house and figuring stuff out. And, Joe, that might be a little bit more atmospheric, Lovecraftian horror, because it's definitely not Arkham Horror, the board game, by any stretch of the imagination, because that app sets the mood and it plays the music and it's creepy and doors are creaking and you don't know what's going on. You're moving around, and since it's playing itself, nobody knows what's going on. You're like, oh, I don't want to open that door. Something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think that Spirit Island, Trent, we just got mentioned in our chat, and I just wanted to come back to saying that Spirit Island is a co-op that does precisely there's just so much information that every player has to process, and it's done simultaneously. I would add, Trent, that the simultaneous nature of it, everything kind of has to happen simultaneously, and that's the way the system works in Spirit Island, which just solves that alpha gamer problem.
Yeah, if it didn't take place simultaneously, that game would take 8 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was one turn at a time, people would be like, oh, well, you've got to do this, then I can do this. So
it doesn't work without the simultaneous play.
Complex simultaneous play fixes that with or without a time constraint. So yeah, right behind you there.
And they're really thoughts, gentlemen.
I think that this has been an excellent update, Trent. I'm glad to hear, that kind of your thoughts on Space Alert sound to me like at this point, if you're like, yeah, I still don't like Space Alert. It's just that this is what it does. I'm totally like, yeah, that makes sense. It's not for everybody.
That's where I'm at with it. And I think it would be very fun to get really into Space Alert from the ground up with the same group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a window for that in my life right now. Like, I don't have a group which that would work. I'm hoping to someday cultivate my family to be that group, but I don't think they're there right now, especially my 7-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But I think someday I can see that with my family, and I think that at that point, Space Alert and its expansion will be a lot of fun with them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, its expansion is going to make it harder. Yeah, it definitely does. But it adds some goofy things, too. Goofy things like, win a game that you started on one day and then finished on the next day. So you have to, start it at 11:55 and then, end it the next day at 12:05 after midnight.
That's kind of cheating, isn't it?
How
else would you do it, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just how you have to do it. There's they add silly things like that. So, I mean, some of it's got silly campaign elements, but I don't want to make it sound like the whole thing is silly. It definitely adds things on both ends of the spectrum. Like, you can take that game so much further now. So, oh my goodness. Murr has owned Space Alert 3 years and have yet to get at the table. Shelf of shame. But I understand why, Murr.
Shame.
It is a game that, oh man, it is definitely tough to get it played and everything. It's got such an awesome way to learn it, but learn from the experiences of our group here. You've got to get a table full of people that are all at the same level, or at least are ready, to sort of play through. I did not like Space Alert my first 2 or 3 games of it because the timed aspect of it frustrated me hard. It frustrated me, and I didn't even feel like I was getting alpha gamed. And Trent, with you, it not only did you feel frustrated by the timed aspect, I noticed, other people, I don't think it was me so much, but others noticed that you were getting frustrated and flustered. And so what they did is try to take over for you, which further frustrated you.
Another
I would agree.
Another co-op game that I really enjoyed playing that I haven't played in a long time was Space Alert. Not Space Alert, Space Cadets. Where like everybody had a dexterity game to do.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we had so much fun with that thing because I couldn't flip my shit for crap to shoot anything. Carissa couldn't steer that ship to save her life. and someone was doing the shields and like totally messed it up and we died so fast. But we were laughing so hard on that game. I think we had to like take a break. That was quite the experience. That was actually kind of fun.
Yeah. That was one where it was almost like 6 mini games that were all vastly different, and you had to teach each one. Like if you got 6 new players, it's like, here, let me teach you the game for you. Let me teach you the game for you. And all of the parts, like some of them were pretty involved. I would say that like if you're going to play a game like Space Cadets, and then ultimately they eventually came out with another one called Dice Duels, I think that the better game for that style, and even though it's not fully cooperative, it's actually team versus team, is Captain Sonar, which was mentioned in our comments.
Captain Sonar is amazing. I love that game.
I like
to get it to
Sonar
the table many times.
What'd he say? What location? I think I know where they are, Gad. Come on, we got to repair this thing. Oh man, that game gets fun.
Mm-hmm.
The table talk on that game is unparalleled. A lot of table talk goes down on Captain Sonar.
And now we have good old Norm. Norm suggests 4-player crokinole if we want to play team versus team. Sir, I'm pretty sure that Canada just decided that you were its national hero for saying that.
Funny.
Yes, with maple syrup too, buddy, and while watching hockey and drinking Labatt's. Or Labatt's. I don't know how if I'm Labatt's. All right. My father-in-law bought it for me once and told me it's pronounced, I think he said Labatt's. I don't know if that's just and his response is A. Yeah. So and then we've got some funny here, like running through. If anybody's played like you were doing TC with Captain Sonar, like get them fixed. You can't. Yeah, we got a surface. Okay, everybody, just outline your parts. Like it's just so frantic and fun. Like there's.
I think they're firing torpedoes at us. Are they firing torpedoes at us? Holy crap!
Sign it. Yes, come on, sign it. We're surfaced.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You do not want to play Captain Sonar next to someone playing Arkwright or 18XX because you'll have enemies for life. Because you will be so loud and so disruptive. It will be legendary.
Yeah. We have a player that actually sometimes brings a Bluetooth microphone to our game nights just hoping to get Space Alert played, and that thing can boom the room. Oh boy. Well, this has been an excellent topic, and it really has shown to me, that recently cooperative games have had a lot of people that notice the same issue that you have, Trent, and have done things to fix it. And I think you just kind of choose what direction you're most interested in. And to me, I think it's kind of an all of the above. I like all these things. I like the limited communication in specific game situations. I think that the time can work. It's a dangerous one, but it can certainly work. And I think above all, the complexity can be the most rewarding, but it can, you're talking about a heavy, complex game, and it has, I think that's just showing that's where my tastes lie. So I really do love, like Spirit Island is just such an excellent co-op. Love it.
Yeah, I like Spirit Island as well. I gotta point out I'm a fan of that. So there are a lot of co-ops I like, and I'm gonna go back again at the very end here and say my intent with this was not to rag on Pandemic. My intent is to complain about the alpha gamer issue, and I just think Pandemic is a good example of that. Mm-hmm. Pandemic does some things really well. It's just the alpha gamer thing really brought it down for me, and there are a lot of co-ops now that alleviate that, and I'm glad. We're gonna leave it at that.
It's more of like, if you like Pandemic, why not try this? That sort of thing. Because to me, Pandemic is an industry standard. It's going to be like, it's like comparing things to Catan in a way. You know, like Pandemic is very similar to Catan in that I would not go back and play Catan. I'm not going to go back and play base Pandemic. There's just too many other things I would prefer, especially now that Pandemic has recently had the Cthulhu Pandemic that I like better because it adds a little bit of randomness and it takes away at least one aspect of the quarterbacking, like that you had to be in the same spot. It makes that part a lot easier for players to be able to manage without one player determining everybody's moves. So I mean, like, it's an industry standard, Trent, and I think that there's a lot of ways in which people that might be in a similar spot to, and I'm not sure if this was you at any point, but like to where you're like, I don't know if I like if cooperative games are for me, because the only cooperative games I like, there's like 2 or 3 that I like, and everybody keeps talking about how much they love these other ones, and they're just, I'm not a big fan. Well, I think, don't just say because you don't like Pandemic, you don't like co-ops. Give these games a shot. Give the ones we've talked about a shot and see whether or not these ones fix the issues that you saw with Pandemic, if that's the case.
Okay.
Well, gentlemen, that brings us now to our hype section. So let's kick it all off with, I think it's time for you, Trent, to tell us all about Tenochtitlan.
Okay. So I don't know much about this, but I'll tell you why it interested me. This is a game I believe was actually announced at Essen, which is going on right now. It's a follow-up game from one of the designers of Sulkin, which is a game that I have a soft spot for. It's a Euro game. I believe this is Daniel Tassini is the designer of this. So I don't know anything about it mechanically other than I have some faith in the designer pedigree. But more than that, I like this game because I've been there. I know the place they're talking about. I've literally been at the place that is depicted on the box's cover. And so that for me, like, makes me interested in the game. Like, literally, I saw the box cover and it brought back a memory. And that was a neat thing for me just to have that happen, and makes me very much want to play the game, in addition to the fact that I'm interested in the designer. So this is what I'm going to be watching for. They're actually saying it's probably an Essen 2018 game, but it's what I'm going to definitely be watching for that reason. I just thought it was an interesting thing to hype. So there you go.
Dude, when you mention those things, like, that is ridiculous. Like, you got the designer behind, he's also done like Voyages of Marco Polo, Grand Austria Hotel, Lorenzo and Magnifico. I mean, we're talking a prolific designer here.
Yes.
And I had no idea that you had this experience with Tenochtitlan.
I have been there. I've climbed it. I've been to the top.
Nice.
That's awesome.
This is a completely sidebar unrelated to gaming. I'm going to share this. This is one of my things. I have been to 2 places in my life where I've genuinely felt spooked out by where I'm at. Like, there's almost like, this is sound really strange, almost like there's something strange about this place, almost like there's a negative sense of, like, bad vibe karma. Something bad has once happened here. 2 places that has ever happened to me was on top of that temple there, Tenochtitlan, and then also at Ellis Island. The 2 places I've ever felt like something is off here.
like just bad vibes.
Yeah, bad vibes. And just those are the 2 places that's ever really happened to me at.
Be sure to avoid the Portland Underground then, because that place spooked the hell out of me.
I think Portland in general.
They Shanghaied people. They actually Shanghaied people to like go over to serve on boats, and it was creepy. But I definitely get you, Trent. There's some places you go to, you're like, ooh, God.
Yep, it was that place. It was because on top of that, the Aztecs did human sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
That was like something they literally did as a religious practice on that site. And I stood there like 500 years later, and it felt wrong to me. I don't know whether it was, I knew it in my head or what, but it just, something felt off when I was there. But it's an experience I vividly remember, and it was so weird seeing a game announced by a designer that I respect. And then I look at the box cover, and I'm literally remember being at the spot that is depicted on that box cover. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I also am very much looking forward to it. I mean, you're talking about Sulkin, right? I mean, just all you got to say is Sulkin and the follow-up to Sulkin, and I'm there. I'm right there, right? That's a game that I would love to try to get on the ground level of a game like Sulkin, because I feel like You know, I got to the hobby just a year or two too late, because every time I play Sulkin, I get owned, like to the point where, you know, I'm struggling. I'm scoring, you know, like I play with somebody online, I score like 20 points, and they're scoring like 170.
Oh, yeah. That's one of those games with a learning curve. Big time.
Oh, my goodness.
Because there's so much planning ahead. It's so much.
I would like to jump in at the base of the learning curve and ride that roller coaster up instead of just getting demolished right as I start. But, you know, I just got to put in a little bit more time, and then I'll at some point I'll at least start to grow in Sulkin and start to feel progress, because I think that's what I need. It's not so much that I'm competitive, it's that I need to feel like I'm getting better. And in those games, it was just like crushing defeat after crushing defeat. It was like they were getting better and I was not. So yeah, it's to me though, it's very, very interesting, and I'd like to see what type of things happen here in Tenochtitlan. Honestly, on my own personal thing would be, I would be more concerned about the like wholesale charlatan that was Cortez when he just subjugated an entire people in that same area, more so than I would be worried about specifically the Aztec ancient practice of human sacrifice. Which,
I agree with that. I'm just saying, when I was out there, I had like a bad vibe when I was on top of it. It was just like something. But I have a fond memory of the day we went out there. It was a very unusual and memorable day. So,
interesting. And then as soon as you stepped onto the top of this building, the clouds just darkened the sky.
Kind of, almost. It was like that. It was really strange.
Wow, you got some magical realism going on here, dude. This is a good old. That's a great Latin, Mexican story.
That's pretty cool.
Between about 2003 and 2005, I spent a lot of time in Mexico for mostly professional reasons, although not 100%, some personal. But I explored a lot of Mexico during those years, and that was one of my experiences that I remember vividly. So there you go.
That's awesome, dude. No, I love that sort of connection to have with these places. That's why I wonder, as people sitting here in the United States, like, we're probably missing out in some ways of that feeling of connection when, a game comes out that's just a European city title that, I've got to go on Wikipedia to find. Well, people in Europe, it's like, that's the audience. Those are people that have been there. And so, we get to share in that here with Tenochtitlan, which I've never been there, but I have studied about it quite a bit. So I'd feel quite interested to play it as well from all those aspects.
Let's do this. So, okay, that's on my SN 2018 hype list.
Okay.
Considering SN 2017 is going on right now.
you're taking the long view here in the future.
The hype machine is out of control. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Someone else needs to talk.
Oh, no, I'll say something here really quick. It's that I think that Teotihuacan is what the game is actually called. It looks like, having had a little bit of investigative work here done in our comments, I think the game itself, which Tenochtitlan is the old Aztec name of the city, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, I got it wrong. I was mixing up memories. I just remembered the name and the book title. The box made me remember it.
Oh no, yeah, that's an easy. Like, I actually kind of have to go back in to remember which one's which.
The city and it's the names of the city and the temple, and I got them switched. My apologies.
No, yeah, that's what made sense to me. Like, no, that makes perfect sense. But yeah, so Teotihuacan, which, yeah, just Google the Sulkin, Google that designer, and then look through the stuff.
And then look at the list.
Teotihuacan is a toughie to get to spell, unless you know how to spell in Spanish. Even then, it has an H in it, which means that all of my Spanish-speaking, like my native Spanish-speaking students in my Spanish class in high school, would not spell it right anyway. They just kind of throw in H's like they would sprinkle on sugar. So, sprinkle on chile onto a corn cob with mayonnaise on it, onto a corn on the cob with mayonnaise. They sprinkle a little chili on there just like they throw their H's on. Too many references, too much culture. We got to move on here. And TC, honestly, between you and I, it's going to be tough to know who's going to go first here, because your mentioned in the comments here, if you're looking at the comments on our video, it's kind of a joke. Like, you're going to hype Love Letter.
No, yeah. Well, actually, the one game I want to hype, but there's one game coming out of Essen that I really want to get my hands on. I'm just going to board the hype train on this one. And I cannot wait to get my hands on Pandemic Season 2, Legacy Season 2, because
literally it was at a game store today and they had it there. That's part of what, yeah.
God, because that... Of all the games I have ever played, I can still tell you what went down in Season 1. It just had some incredibly fun story moments in it. And that was like, we had so much fun playing that thing. And we have been just chomping at the bit. Ever since it came out and we liked it, we saw it was Season 1. We're like, Season 2's coming. Season 2's coming. And I've been looking at it, but not too much because I don't want to know what's about it. I'm just like, oh, I can't wait. My group is just so excited to play this. I can't wait to see where the story goes. Oh, yes. Bring Season 2 on. I've been waiting for this for years.
Yeah, I'm right behind you in terms of being interested in the direction the story's going to go. I think that I'm almost more excited, though, to see what all the people that loved Season 1 say about Season 2. You know, I want to see if...
I could see that. I could see that. But yeah, because it looks different. Because it looks like in this one you're supposed to be like exploring what's left of the world. So I'm like, ooh, post-apocalyptic stuff. Ooh, Fallout. Ooh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's like it starts off and like you only have a little bit of the entire world exposed, and the rest of the board is black.
Yeah, and who knows what the world's like? I'm like, wow.
I have heard from a couple people that this does bigger. There is bigger twists to the Pandemic formula in this than Season 1. I don't know any more than that. I've just heard that from a couple people.
Yeah, and I hate to be, hyping a game that's already like hyped and hyped to death, but I can't help it. I'm just like Pavlov's dog or something. I don't know. I'm just like, I gotta play this game.
Well, it hasn't been hyped on this podcast, really. I mean, Season 2 has not been hyped here. So, and I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear the more popular opinions, like the ones that are around a lot, because a lot of times we end up just, much more interested in like heavy games. And I want to hear, TC, I want to hear your take as somebody who loves Season 1 once you get Season 2 actually tabled.
Dude, I'll get Carissa on and we'll talk about it. She's a creative writer and she loved the direction Season 1 went. If Season 2 does half of what we're expecting it to, we'll get on and talk about it, but we have to muzzle her at certain points because she'll probably spill the beans on everything.
Cool. All right, well, that's exciting. It sounds like that one has already been like by the Dice Tower guys. It sounds like they've already said they liked it better. So anyway, that's pretty strong early review, and that'll probably help them sell a lot of copies.
Yeah.
I have decided I'm going to take a little U-turn here, and instead of hyping the same thing that I hyped last week, which apparently I forgot to change, I'm going to talk about a game that just came into my hands. And this is in the comments. I was like, oh, no. Anyway, in the description, Clans of Caledonia just came in, and I got it all separated. I read the rules on it, and I got to say that I am quite interested to see how it just feels to me like
back in the box.
Yes, actually, I didn't have a problem with it, but I had them all in little bags. I mean, I kind of just pillaged the bags that were in there. Did you have an issue with that?
I have heard stories to that effect. I didn't have much issue either, but I did the same thing as you did and baggied everything, and I always throw away inserts. I hate them. So
anyway. Yeah, I don't think they actually did this. This one didn't come with an insert. It was just a bunch of
cardboard.
Yeah. So
okay.
I pitched all the punch boards. I mean, the only reason you'd have an issue, I think, is the punch boards. It is a small box. It's a thin box, and there's quite a bit of content in here, especially, I mean, like, in terms of, it reminds me of a Stonemaier Games production. So it's got, like, all these little bits that are shaped, just to look like the cute things that they are. Like, you've got cow meeples that look nice, and, of course, the sheep meeples everybody loves. You got whiskey barrels that are actually three-dimensional. My brother was struck by it, and I was struck by how similar the gameplay is, just in terms of the way that you grow out. It's almost like an economic, meaning that everything costs you money, version of Terra Mystica, where you've also got, like, almost Marco Polo style varied player powers, and I'm excited to get it tabled, and hopefully it is more of an economic game than the others, than like say Terra Mystica, which definitely wouldn't be among its features. But I I would really like to see how it plays, and I think that it looks like it's going to have quite a bit of replayability as well.
Cool.
Well,
that
guys,
sounds pretty neat.
This has so far been legit. It's been good. It's been legit. That's me hearing from high schoolers, and that's not even what they say anymore. They don't even say legit. They say lit now. They say
really
lit. Yeah, and I think I've said this before. If I ever want to kill something dead, kill like a phrase, all I got to do is start using it in front of my students.
I don't know. That sounds pretty boss.
If you hate their slang, start using it.
Yep, it'll go away real fast.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, this has been lit, gentlemen.
Lit. Sweet.
And Murr and Norm, it has been great to hear from you guys. You guys provided an awesome amount of content here in our chat. You guys have been right there with us and provided a lot of games that I've used. And anyway, invite please to anybody who's interested in participating in the Good Board Ugly community. This is like the best way that you can participate here by being here when we actually record. I try to acknowledge and comment and actually get what you guys are saying into the episode at some capacity. And this is about this community that we're forming. So thank you guys for being here, and also thanks still to all of you that are listening on your own, private, in your cars, on your commutes and stuff. And hopefully this has made your day a little bit more interesting, a little bit brighter for you. So
yeah, thanks for the contributors, because I would have totally spaced on the grizzled if someone hadn't mentioned it.
It's a good one to bring up in that discussion of cooperatives. So very good suggestions, lots of them there, and we actually were able to pin down Teotihuacan and Teotihuacan. We're gonna just straight up. Next episode's gonna be in Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. So,
oh God, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Lots and lots of consonant combinations we're not very good with. So yes, we're going to read the Popol Vuh. Goodness gracious, man. I can't pronounce things anymore. So, gentlemen, this has been awesome. I'm Joe Sallin, the host of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. I've been joined tonight by two wonderful individuals that I have had a blast talking with, starting with Mr. Portland.
Yeah, TC, good talking to you, Joe.
And also a partner in crime for a very long time. And that's a great time. I'm sorry, Trent.
Yeah. I didn't know when you were going to pause.
I didn't either. It was just flowing, man. It was flowing.
I'll just say fellow L5R addict. That's all.
And honestly,
very awkward.
It's weird. I don't know if it's fertile ground or if it's that you guys just sold it so heavy in this episode, but this is now the time when I'm like, no, I legit want to play this. I want to be where you guys are at. And I don't know if it's that it's just taken a while for the seeds to be sown, and now that they're starting to flower. But Trent, we got to play this game. Seriously, I want to play this game.
L5R, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. It's different. It's got two decks at once.
Oh, it's crazy. It's fun.
Oh yeah. Trent, I'm thinking that it's gonna be lit.
It's lit. You'll be boss playing it.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna be the boss. Yeah.
This game is so fetch.
It's fetch.
Oh yes, fetch too. Or how about nah?
Well, if we ever meet up at a convention, we'll just be in the corner playing L5R over and over again. Yeah, we don't care about anything else. We got this going.
All right. Well, maybe you'll hear about that experience, and maybe I'll still hold out next time we record this. But anyway, that's all we got for this week on The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. Please have a great week of gaming and catch us next week. Thanks to all of you. And let's end this on a high note. So anyway, we're done. We're done now. Let's end it. Let's just end it. I'm going to click stop.
Stop it.
Stop. I'm done. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Good, the Board, and the Ugly with hosts Joe Sallin, Trent Ham, and Andrew Dennison. Edited by Josh Hubble. Our music is Longing for Tumbleweed by Admiral Bob featuring Snowflakes. Follow us on Twitter at GoodBoardUgly and on BoardGameGeek at BoardGameGeek/guilds/2173.